This is Clara Bow, the it girl of Hollywood in the 1920s, known for her glamorous looks and party girl lifestyle. She exemplifies the roaring 1920s. But I want you to think as you read this chapter, chapter 22 of American Yawp, who did the 20s roar for? If you Googled 1920s party costumes, for example, you would see a very, very narrow idea of what people in the 1920s looked like. You'd have a gangster guy and a flapper-looking girl. If you go back and look at actual newspapers or magazines or advertisements from the 1920s, you would see a wider range of what people were wearing and what they looked like. Not everyone dressed like a gangster and his moll. You would also notice that those same magazines and newspapers would depict almost exclusively white people. So thinking about the 1920s means thinking about people who might not show up in our stereotypes about that decade, but whose lives and experiences and achievements matter just as much, and who probably need to replace our simplistic idea about the roaring 20s. So it's a decade that was marked by mass production and consumption and spending and access to consumer credit. Many more people had buying power to purchase things like radios, refrigerators, to have electricity in their homes, to have a phonograph and to buy records for it, maybe jazz records, to go to the movies pretty frequently, maybe even have a car, a Model T. The shorter skirts of women's fashion suggest that there might have been some new freedoms for women. You might be familiar with literature of the era, from writers of the Harlem Renaissance or the novels of F. Scott Fitzgerald. Chapter 22 meets the Unit 2 objective to explain how the 1920s was a decade of conflict and tension, despite aspirations of normalcy. So that objective should alert you that there's more going on in the 1920s than appears on the surface. This is the election map from the election of 1916, the re-election campaign of President Woodrow Wilson. And this is the election map from 1920. And 1924 and 1928 look very similar. So we can see that something pretty dramatic happened politically between the 1910s and the 1920s. The title frames this as the new era. So I want you to think as you read this chapter, what's new and what's not? This brings up a concept in history that's a very important one, which is to keep in mind continuity and change. Sometimes we just focus on the change, about what's new, what's shiny, what's different. But continuity is often just as important. What's not changing? What carries over from earlier eras and carries forward into later ones? I've provided a downloadable Word document as a notes guide for this chapter. It invites you to pull out terms that you see as important and to answer a series of discussion questions. It's optional. It's just a way to structure and organize your study of the textbook. And as always, reach out if you have any questions. There's a lot to explore in the 1920s, and I encourage you to look beyond the textbook, enjoy the learning activities that are connected with this module, and maybe explore a little bit outside the frame of the classroom too, to expand your knowledge of the 1920s. It's a really interesting time period, and I hope you enjoy learning more about it. All right, enjoy the 20s.